Welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds. I am Nerdug, and tonight I am going to sound off on a very exciting D&D topic with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted, how are you doing this fine and lovely evening, sir?
As always on a Monday, I am jazzed up. I like the fresh start of a weekend like most people. Monday is my favorite day because we start off with a cool meeting and I get to wrap it up talking to my nerdy friends about cool stuff.
Yeah, it's always fun. Today I've had a bit of a struggle day. By now I think a lot of people are aware of my broken finger. But I don't want this to sound like I'm just gonna sit playing all night. But I had a follow up with the surgeon today, and it was all about like, oh, I'm gonna squish this and take off the bandage to examine, and I haven't felt as bad in like a week, so it's a hurting.
So you're not exactly feeling sound?
Correct.
If nothing else, that's a pretty awesome story of a broken bone that you got to do during a sword fight.
Yeah, we were gathered for Dave's daughter's birthday and high school graduation this past week, and some of my family that I don't see very often, the extended family, and they're like, "Oh no, what happened to your finger?" I'm like, I broke it sword fighting. The looks that you get, like, even those who know how odd I am and how much I'm into fantasy stuff, like, nobody expects to hear in a regular conversation that somebody got a sword fighting injury.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So tonight we're talking about sound as it relates to D&D, which is a topic that's been in the topic bank for some time. I think I put it there a long time ago.
Yeah, it's been bouncing around, and finally we're going to get a chance to see what it's like or hear what.
Yeah. And so, like many of our topics, the more I thought about it, I just started having more ideas that led me down several rabbit holes. My first stop was just thinking like, well, have I ever used sound much in my games? And in fact, I have. When I had an in-person group, I like to have just like an ambient soundtrack in the background of just like music that's sort of like evocative and things. And for that, I always recommend there's a musician named Clint Mansell who used to be in an 80s like all pop rock band called Pop Elite itself, based on a lot of film scores and video game scores. And for me, I like the Mass Effect 3 soundtrack. I think is good, just general sort of music that I found in the background. It's cool. It has some dramatic moments. It's not like, in your face and everything, but it's like, it's pretty evocative too. And I just like the sound of it. So a lot of times when we were playing my home game, that Spelljammer campaign, I would just have that sort of like on a loop. And it was a lot of fun. Not too loud though, because you want to hear people talking and whatnot.
Right. For me, when I was thinking sound, my brain went in two directions.
Sure.
Like, yes, there is the typical, oh, this is what you hear, and I'll get into that part in a little bit. Two things that really jumped out at me when I heard sound as a topic. There's either, all right, what is your favorite battle music, for when combat starts?
Okay.
To me, we added something else later, and I don't remember what specific track, but it was the Gladiator soundtrack after that one came out. But for like a clear, solid decade of gaming, battle music was the Anvil of Crom from Conan.
Okay.
No two ways about it. We had that keyed up, and we would just loop it, and that's just how it worked, and it was great. I still, to this day, have that in the back of my mind because it's ingrained at this point in time.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it probably became like just like a like a psychological trigger. Like, okay, I know what's happening now. Sort of like the same way that like when you roll initiative, it's just like, okay, something's different's happening. I got to pay attention.
Right. Well, I mean, literally roll initiative. I begin hearing the beginning story beat or the beginning music beats.
Oh yeah.
Because it's there.
Yeah, sure.
But the other direction that I think about is like sound as damage. And
Okay.
in earlier editions, sonic damage was a thing. And I guess
Oh yeah.
cool enough for 5th edition that they're like, you know what? We're gonna call it thunder.
Thunder damage, yeah.
But like, to me, when I think about it, like, I love the concept of a bard, who is like, I'm gonna focus on doing things that are, sound based. So
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah, for
bard who
sure.
does thunder damage, could be a lot of fun. And whether you do the Scanlan scream, or
Or you strum your lute and it does a thunder wave or whatever. Yeah.
Like, to me, that stuff is really kind of cool and evocative of what I would want to see out of like a combat ready bard.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially like you mentioned in 3.5, I played a few bards, and that it might not have been like the whole focus, but it's like the 3.5 bards seem, probably just because there was like so many more feats and everything, but like they seemed more focused on music to me. Right? I mean,
Right.
You could play all sorts of bards, but it just had that feel. So yeah, there was always that. It's like, well, of course, like I want to do like the sonic damage because it's like coming out of my instruments or whatever, right? Or
right,
like, voice, yeah.
Instrument or vocals, like
yeah.
I love that concept of like, you could be playing, but you actually sing the vibrations of your voice.
Are there any? There's got to be dragons that their breath weapon is thunder damage, right? Like maybe one of Metallic's, because it's like, yeah, it's not as roasty or like pulverizing sounding as like acid and stuff.
Off the top of my head, I don't remember any particular dragon having.
Maybe a gem dragon. I'm sure there's some draconic breath weapon that does thunder damage. There's got to be, right? If there's that, geez.
Where's my fizz bands?
But yeah, so I was for like dragonborn characters. Oh, maybe that maybe in Fizzbins, maybe like one of the gem dragon ancestries is thunder damage. That'd be cool to just think, can you have like a screamer type character, just focus on that. Yeah, there's quite a few like pretty low level thunder damage, like thunderclap, thunder wave. You can usually tell because they have the word thunder in them.
Sapphire.
Oh, okay.
Sapphire nice. Thunder.
And is that one of the dragonborn?
That's one of the gems, yeah. So
cool.
Is force, crystal is radiant, emerald is psychic, sapphire is thunder, and topaz is necrotic.
Okay, so yeah, so a sapphire dragonborn bard focuses on thunder damage. That sounds pretty dope.
Yeah, I would totally play that in RPG.
Heck yeah. Boy, I'm gonna write that down. We might have to do a video about that or something. That sounds pretty cool to me now. I actually, this isn't exactly about sound, but it is somewhat timely since we'll be revisiting those bastards in a not too distant future. So DM Robin let us make little tweaks and things because it's been years since those characters were first made. There's a lot of cool options out there. I didn't do too much. I don't know if you did, but I did change from using an ability score increase to just make his stats go up to the gift of the brass dragon.
Okay, nice.
Because I figured like, well, that was his mentor. And it's pretty cool. It seems very ventish. You can just like produce fiery dragon wings. So like, I don't know if it's like your proficiency bonus today. And you can't fly, but you can use them to like shield, you can do as a reaction to like shield somebody nearby, like cover them with the wings. I was like, that seems like a pretty vent thing to do. And you can cast Cure Light Wounds. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
I was like, that seems pretty sweet.
All the gift feats are pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
We've been recording a number of videos of the best feats for this subclass or that subclass.
Yeah, those are fun.
And I've looked at a number of those as options. For anything that's spellcastery, I've been eyeing up Fey touched and shadow touched, but like you couple those with the gifts of the insert dragon here.
Yeah.
You can make some really interesting characters depending upon things are done.
If you made a dragonborn fighter, and if you wanted to have some wiggle room, fighter rogue, because they get far more feats than everybody else, and just took like gift of the this dragon, gift of the that dragon. It's like, man, you would be a pretty darn draconic character by the time you get to 20th level.
Well, I mean, if you were going to do it that way, then you have to put in, Dragonborn sorcerer, even if it was just like a single level dip, just to be like, all right, got that covered.
Yeah, for sure. Get that little AC bump and
so ask the question: how dragon is your dragon? But I mean, you'd have a lot of options at that point in time.
For sure.
So maybe that's a CBG. Let us know, whether you want to see us make that character.
Mm-hmm. Now, aside from, like sound, like we said, like soundtracks, or even like Sirenscape, which is a lot of like pretty, just I don't want to say complicated, but like in depth. You can get pretty robust with it.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I'm a big fan of just like onomatopoeia. I mean, I make sound effects, as I'm sure many people just do naturally. And even that can be evocative, of just like something happens suddenly. It's just like, yeah, you're walking along and bam, something
right
happens. It's like
it depends upon what it is and how comfortable I feel making that sound with who I'm with.
Mm-hmm.
Like to me, like there are some
like the creaking door opening and stuff. I figure, hey, I have always, this is real quick, but like I always figure, like, look, man, if I'm sitting down playing D&D with people, like they're all a bunch of nerds. So if I make a creaky, if I look like a fool making a creaky door sound, it's like, hey, you're sitting here rolling dice with me, dude.
It's true.
But anyway, sorry.
To me, there's certain things that I feel like I do well, and there's certain animal sounds that or thinks that I'm, insane. Like I shouldn't be able to do those kind of things. But I mean, she's 10 and loves animals, so of course anything that I emulate, she adores.
You got to do one for us now. They meant you're boasting of these animal mimicry skills.
Oh well, okay. Well, I mean, a good frog croak, a good turkey warble.
You can do a good frog croak. Wow, that is good.
And then
a golf clap.
A pretty good like tiger snarl going that has freaked my kids out quite a number of times.
Oh yeah.
So it's
I'm impressed.
Like I said, it's only a handful that I do, but it's it's I don't know, it is a thing. And like I had a cat-based character in my Monster of the Week game. Wound up getting to a monster transformation, and like I let loose a snarl at the table and nobody batted an eye. Whereas like my kids have like literally flinched. So I'm like, I don't know.
Isn't it fun playing? It is fun. I see the appeal of playing animal characters, especially when you like the animal.
Right.
Like I'm not like super all about like having, they all seem cool. I mean, but like I played a cat type character too. And it's just like, I love cats. It's fun to play the thing when you like the animal. It's pretty early, but we do have, I think, I'd say an important question to address, to offer some sound observations on, to keep it in there. This is from Redbeard Walton. It says, about to start a 3.5 Eberron campaign with some close friends. It's their first outing as a DM. Any advice for running 3.5? My past experience was very rules light homebrew, theater of the mind style. They're hella nervous. Go ahead.
Well, Redbeard, while all of us here have played 3.5, it has been quite some time. My memory and my experience with it is rules light in 3.5. They are, hashtag cool. Because 3.5 very much has a ruling for everything. So hopefully you get along well with the players and maybe they have a better grasp of the actual rules and you won't need to like call people on things. But like any type of tabletop role playing, just do your best and have a good time. And if you've got, a rules question, just say, hey, give me a minute to look this up, or can we table this? Use, what idea comes best to mind for the moment, move on and figure it out afterwards.
Yeah. Right. Dovetailing with that, I would say, I mean, you're already got a good thing going because you're playing with close friends. So it's not like total strangers who are going to be, getting on your case or whatever. So that's cool. But yeah, I'd say I mean, there is a lot of rules, but technically there's a lot of rules of 5e too. And a lot of people cite like that thing of like, oh, the rules aren't in charge, you are, is like some innovation of 5e. It's like that's just them explicitly saying like, yeah, that's always the case, man. Like nobody knows all the rules of all these games, even the people that made them. And honestly, it's just a finesse thing. I mean, I'd say part of it's trying to discern like, well, when the rules are concerned, like, well, what is everybody's motivation for caring about the rules? Is it the fun of being like, oh man, I love that I can add up all these things and like, just have this huge number, which in 3.5 in some ways, trying to get those high numbers was the players essentially saying like, I cannot fail this thing. Like I'm going to do this thing. And if you want me to show you the math, like just show your work, I can show you. So in that sense, I would say you're kind of going to be okay too, because if you're used to very rules light, which usually favors the players, then you're going to do that anyway. So it's like if they like totally crunch down and optimize their characters, it's just like, okay, well, if you just take them at their word basically and be like, oh, it's a plus, I got a plus 40 or whatever. It's like, okay,
So it comes down to what kind of experience you have at the table.
Yeah.
And like regardless of rule set, it's possible to have that experience, with some tweaks if you need to. I like the less ruling of 5e because it allows for more judgment calls and the less rules to argue. Because that was one of the things that was my least favorite part of the game. While 3.5 has a number of things that I do like and miss. And I've had conversations with my son, who I know the type of player he is and would, I think, probably prefer 3.5. But that's not the game we're playing. So like, what are you gonna do? But have fun with the game and don't stress out.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, basically that's awesome sound advice, because it's like, yeah, we all get nervous before. I mean, even Dave and Ted and Chris Perkins and Matt Mercer and everybody else, it's like they've all said like, yeah, before I play with every time when you DM, you're a little bit nervous, just like, what if nothing goes wrong?
I've got 2 large experiences coming up, gaming wise.
Yeah.
So not this coming week, but the following. August 11th, 12th, and 13th. Over the course of those 3 days, I've got 4 games, 2 of which I'm running. And then next month, I'm back off to D&D in a castle to run 6 sessions over 3 days. So
I was hella nervous when I did that. I can tell you that much.
So and I haven't written as much for this one so far as what I had done or what we had collectively done for that one. But I've still got a little over a month and I've begun work. So it's kind of being built off of something I already did before. So like I technically have some stuff started or more stuff started than, what I'm thinking about, but it's a process of, all right, let's make this happen.
Nice. So just a quick follow-up, and Redbeard Walton said 3.5 is a choice based on the players liking the crunch and the unending options available. So in that case, I would say, from my experience playing it myself, this was, a lot of the motivation there of the crunch is like, you have a specific cool thing you want your character to do, and there's a mechanical way to get there that you can just do it, right? So just, keep that in mind and try to recognize what those cool things they want to do are, and try to facilitate situations where those things seem even cooler, like if somebody wants, like if, for instance, I had a character that I based on a dragoon in 3.5, like from Final Fantasy. Right. And as there's so many feats and magic items and everything, because it was like a 9th level game when there was like the starting wealth, and we were all crunching the like, well, I have this gold, I could buy this item and magic item, and I'd be able to have. And it's like he could just, before we even played, just a white room, it's like he could leap up in the air like 30 feet, and then like for every 10 feet he went at something, he did like more damage with a spear,
Right.
which did all these feats, so they did that, and it was just crazy.
Right.
It's like you could just, yeah.
Yeah. Well, regardless of what rule set you're playing, anytime you give players to do the cool option that their character is designed to do, that's only going to make them enjoy the session more. So,
Mhm.
yeah,
I guess that's why I like 5e more, just in the sense of like they just streamlined all that. It's like, yeah, you don't have to figure out like which feet path to take. It's like you just get it. It's
right.
like you can just do that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe for me, it's just like, yeah, I don't need to feel, I don't feel like personal like gratification, like, but I figured out how to get there by navigating, 1,100 feet, as they say. It's like I didn't have to do that.
So I'm going to jump a little further back
Sure.
in the chat here. There's a cool comment that
Okay.
pigpug underscore 214 is saying. It says, my brain immediately went to sound as a mechanic. His DM hates dealing with material components, so he renamed the mages as singers. So it sounds like everything just has a vocal component to it, and magic is done through song or through, vocal stuff. So that is absolutely a pretty cool thing to do with a world, and to get away with the annoyance.
Yeah, sure. That has like that rings to me of like nothing specific, but just like, yeah, like a sort of a rich world building thing. Like, I mean, I've read a lot of fantasy novels. It's like, oh, in this world, magic works this way. There's that sort of quality where it's like, oh, that's pretty cool, and then you can kind of go from there. It's like, well, maybe there's different orders of wizards that are organized by like, the musical sort of term, like notes or staff, or like the cleft and all that sort of thing. That'd be kind of cool.
So, like, getting into music notes and that kind of stuff, like, if you've got a bard or someone who's musically inclined, like, you can incorporate, music into riddles. Like, oh, well, you've got some kind of pictorial thing, and the way it's laid out, if you happen to notice this and notice that, there could be like an actual like music, not lyric, like a sequence of notes to follow. And if you were to play that in sequence, it's going to open the door or, undo the barrier. Sound can be used, in so many different ways, and incorporating it into puzzles when you've got a musically inclined character, can really highlight that for that character and make them like super happy.
Yeah, that reminds me. On one of the Big Bang Theories, they played a D&D Christmas adventure, and there was a puzzle like that with like the numbers, and they all had like handbells, so they had to figure out like which order to bring them in, and it was just like Silent Night or what, I don't remember. It was a Christmas song as they were like playing it, like, oh, they realized what it was.
That was Big Bang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were playing D&D, so it's even more relevant.
Yeah, there's a handful of D&D episodes that, I definitely enjoy that,
oh yeah.
show, and that made me like it more.
For sure.
So it's not quite the halfway point. But, I will sound off that in 7 more minutes, I'm going to do my typical admin thing.
Okay.
We'll wait for that kind of stuff. So I figured I'll get into the aspect of using sound, like not anything in the real world, but describing things that happen in ways that you might not expect. That aforementioned party that I was at this weekend, we had the largest collection of gamers at like a family party in a very long time, because it was like some of a couple different gaming groups, and like, now that my sister plays and my kids play and her kids have played, and it was like, wow, there's quite a lot of people here that, roll funny shaped dice. I got into a conversation with somebody that I just met for the first time, and we got into like just the long winding conversation that typically happens with gamers. And he gave me, an experience that I had never heard of before. And, I brought up my experience with Eyes, the character who had a ridiculous passive perception. And he's like, oh yeah, we had one of those in our group too. And this is how the DM handled it. So when you've got a character with a high passive perception that nobody else has anywhere close to, they're going to be the one to notice every little pin drop, every little creak of a floorboard, every little leaf on the wind if you get really crazy. So like if you're not careful, that high passive perception could wind up leading to a very paranoid and jumpy.
Yeah, it could be distracting and stuff. Yeah, just like your DM's constantly like, oh, you hear like a rustling coming from that. It's like, oh, we should check that out. It's just like, there's nothing there. Like, is somebody following us? Like, no, you just have it's like Daredevil, yes. Or Superman. It's like I have to tune it down to just act normal.
But like, the player was like, hearing stuff as the character, I should say. And he would turn to his allies and be like, I don't hear anything. I don't hear anything. They thought he was nuts because they were all the time that nobody else was hearing. So like it was wound up working against him.
That's hilarious.
It's quite comical. And like, I did not mean to inflict, because it really was. I inflicted this character upon a DM. I didn't realize when I made it that this was their first time DMing. I even asked her, I'm like, look, I can make something else. I can take away and like, I can change this. And she's like, no, it's not a problem. I'm just not going to deal with traps. And I don't have to worry about prepping that stuff, but like a more experienced DM who's come across things like that might have a couple tools in their tool belt to kind of, throw a monkey wrench into that kind of character concept. So to hear somebody else's experience where they got to experience that monkey wrench, that's kind of cool to hear.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that makes me think of one of the other points is just like, sound is an effective DM tool, like in that way, that was like a far end of one thing. But I was like looking through our, our own Nerdarchy content. I'm like, well, we don't have sound ever come up there. There's quite a few out of the box encounters that incorporate sound in meaningful ways. For starters, and more than a few of our Mage Forge items alter, affect, or interact with sound in some way. So I thought that was kind of interesting. One of them was actually one of my favorite items because the art is one of my faves, and that Cloak of the Whispering Wind, where like when you have the hood up, you just like can hear sounds of like just like whispered talking and stuff. And a lot of those things, that's we're really pushing hard. By the way, not too many days left where you can pre-order your own Mage Forge, because we're just about done wrapping up putting that together. But so go check it out. I'm sure there's a link in the description. But I like a lot of our items have those things. Again, they come straight from our games where it's like, they might, in the same way that we were talking about eyes and that other character lead the characters down different paths. I like that thing, and it's just like, well, I want to, like, I can imagine a player thinking like, well, what do they say? Can I try to figure out what they're saying? And you could play with that like over time, of like weave plot threads through there. That's awesome.
Well, that's one of the things, like, the Cloak of the Whispering Wind, while it's been slightly modified from where it was originally created, like that was from one of my games, and it was inspired by an item that Dave made, years upon years ago when we were playing a ridiculous 3.5 game. And
the one where you had all the pages of magic items.
Oh yeah. that ridiculous game. Which I wound up sharing that list, or part of that list with my son, just recently, and he's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things like, I love putting aspects to magic items in there.
Mm-hmm.
Plays with it, okay, well, maybe there's a chance that magic item either gains a new power, has some kind of transformation, gains a new ability, whatever, like you need to do. If players invest time in something, there's usually going to be something to come of it. It might not be a direct reward right now, but it's going to be something better usually down the road.
Yeah, that's a really sound piece of DM advice right there, the nugget of, rather than like develop this whole expansive idea, right? Like, oh,
Mhm.
like if they do this, then they hear this and blah, blah, blah. It's like, just keep it vague because then it becomes like a tool that you can mold to do whatever you want and you didn't already invest time like you're
Right.
thinking. And then it's like, that doesn't seem cool. Or like Dan said, it's like maybe they just don't care. Like, so you have all this thing and then you kind of feel like, oh, they missed out on this thing. It's just like, just put that.
Yeah.
It's a little detail, and it's because I've done that many times. Many of the items in the Mage Forge from my games are the same way, where it's like I just like a lot. You do too. It's like you just add one little detail, how something looks, or how it sounds when you use it. I mean, like
Mhm.
the hammer, the Moradanes. It's like it's not a really crazy powerful item, but it's just like when it's like a anvil turned into a sword. So like when it hits, it like sounds like a gong, and
Mhm.
or like a hammer hitting an anvil, basically.
All
Just
right.
things like
Well,
that. And it's like when players think like, well, what does that mean? Because that's why we do that, because that
mhm.
has happened to me many times. And I'm like, well, just depending on the circumstances,
All
you
right.
know,
Well,
come
the
up with
30
side
minute
effects.
bell, the 30
Oh,
minute bell has rung. So you guys know what that means. It's admin time. So first and foremost, up on the docket, if you happen to know that today is August 1st, but you don't know what today is, I want all of you out there to sound off in the chat and wish a mighty happy birthday. And even though he's not here, it's Dave's birthday. If you're catching this live, put it in the live chat. If you're catching this after the fact, put it in the comments below. He's going to read them before I will. It's happy birthday to Nerdarchy Dave. Boom, boom, boom. But beyond that, it's also the first Monday of the month, which means it's giveaway time. And there's a large box over there that Dave took a picture of when he was here last week that we're giving away next month. So if you haven't signed up for Patreon or the newsletter to get it in on our monthly giveaways, there's a big box that's going to be, going back to school, empty the Nerdarchy giveaway shelf, even though it's not. Uh, a lot of stuff. And wow. But this month, we're giving away a copy of The Wild Beyond the Witchlight. We've still got like one or two more issues of The Crucible, as well as the newly released, was it Journey Through the Radiant Citadel? I'm trying to remember the full title.
yeah.
So, two hardcover books, one of them just released. So this is going to be going to, oh crap, it's not in that one. I've already emailed the person, and it's Sean. We didn't get a last, so I've already reached out. It was 2 hours ago. So if you've gotten the email from me and your name is Sean, well then congratulations, you're a winner. All I need is your address, and I will get that sent. But since it's Nerdarchy Dave's birthday month, he's the one that gets to run a fan game for you all out there. And we have a list of 10 people that have been selected, usually the first 5 that are going to respond to him to say that they're able to make it. He is going to run a game on August 20th at 2 p.m. And those lucky few are Austin Garcia, Bailey, Bradley Hall, Cake, Uwe, UWE. I'm not certain what's the proper pronunciation of that. Eckert,
Ooey.
Joel Anderson, Tathaj, Joseph Gently, and Vaughn Romero. So I've sent those names and emails to Dave. Dave will contact as soon as, he is willing and able, possibly already sent, because that message was sent to him 2 hours ago as well. So August 28th, 2 p.m. will be the fan game. We always run them off air so you guys don't feel pressured to kind of perform, and he gets to run a fun game and not have to worry about him performing as well, and just kind of focus on the game and those lucky players. So that's the admin report for today. I'll throw out yet again, there's a large box that I'm giving away next month with a whole bunch of stuff. And if that's not enough, the October giveaway is going to be 4 special edition covers all lumped together. So even if you don't win this month or next month, there's always good stuff coming, and
Oh yeah.
we got a large shelf here, so we'll see how much we can fill it up. And of course, PAX Unplugged is only a handful of months away, and we tend to restock up for that too. So,
Hey, isn't Gen Con this week? Like starts this week?
Gen Con starts this week, and I'm seeing all the emails about all the things going on and the different things, and I really want to go. I didn't buy tickets, I didn't do anything. So like I know it ain't gonna happen, but I would really like to be there this year.
Well, for people that are going to be there, I think we have a few friends, special friends there. Brian Collin of Creature Creation and Infinite Black's got a pretty decent sized booth, and his booths always look amazing.
Oh yeah.
And now, I mean, every year he's got just more and more cool stuff. This year he's got Vast Grim and Over the Troll Bridge. I don't know if that's there, but in his usual assortment of monsters and everything. And out of the box encounters, he's did us a solid, and you'll find some of those at the Creature Curation booth. And also, I think Limitless Adventures also has a supply of out of the box hardcovers at their booth, and those guys have a ton of really useful content that I've used in my games tons of times too. So if you're at Gen Con, go check them out on the vendor floor while you're there.
Yeah, go, say hi. If you don't have a physical copy of Out of the Box and you're looking to get one, I mean, that's definitely an easy way to grab your copy now. And
who knows, maybe Andy and those guys will bundle it with some of their stuff, or I don't know what they're doing. They're just got some books and they'll be selling them however they deem necessary.
Absolutely. So all right, we still have plenty of time. So let's
there was a comment, actually a question from Parks. We could start there. Or unless you had something you wanted to.
No, I was just gonna, I was just trying to work another sound pun in, but
I'm sorry.
No.
As a pun lover, but Parks says, have you all ever thought about running a quiet place style game where the slightest noise will attract badass monsters more than capable of taking on the party? I have not. It's interesting. I mean, I'm thinking about it now.
So I believe that's more of a horror style game. And, while I'm not opposed to it, that generally isn't the direction that I tend to think in. For me, I tend to run, even like when I adjust, I'd rather, adjust some horror into my fantasy as opposed to going like full-fledged horror. But that's just my particular preference.
Mm-hmm.
But there's definitely a lot of people who like that style of game, and when it's like, all right, that the slightest screw up could be end of story, and I just don't like giving the dice that much power.
I think if I was going to do that, obviously, that's something you'd all discuss in your session 0. That would be pretty lame if you didn't. You were just like, the party's like, okay, like, oh, I yelled to the guy that I see across the street. You're like, okay, a huge monster comes out and kills you. It's lame. But that being said, that sort of touches on one of the points I had found, which was that a lot of spells mention sound in some way, whether how they sound or they affect sound, amplify it, or mention how far it can be heard. But I noticed a great many of them, aside from the thunder ones that we mentioned earlier and the classic knock, a lot of them are spells that I don't see cast very often, including silence. I felt like what to me was a famous casting of it to shut that rival up during your Dungeons and Delving campaign. I just threw a silence on her while she was giving an interview. But yeah, there was, I don't have it pulled up anymore. I don't remember exactly what they were, but there was like a lot of sort of like exploratory spells that like you, even tangential things like, sensors and arcane eye that you can like hear through. And I think things like that, and, again, like everybody being on board. And then the next thing I would do is probably curate a list of like, well, what all monsters have like keen senses? Because you're thinking like, well, it's D&D, they want to progress and level, right? So it's like if you just made like, oh yeah, the things that are out there like CR like 15 or something, we're starting at first level or whatever. It's like, oh, that's kind of but you could have progressive threats of just creatures, whether you got to tweak them or not. I mean, a lot of beasts have keen hearing, so they can make noise and hear noise. So maybe it's just a world, you tweak the premise a little bit where it's like, well, it's not just these one creatures, it's just like making, maybe just like everything in the world is very predatory towards humanoids, let's say, and you just curate your monsters of like all the ones with keen senses, and you just can't make a lot of noise. So then spells like silence and stuff come in very handy, or like stealth checks, or like Boots of Elvenkind, where it's like you make no sound. That it sounds cool, and it's like, oh yeah, that's how they work. But it's like, oh, that's kind of key in this scenario like this. The fact that it's like, no, it says they make no sound, so it's like my footsteps don't make any sound. Even Pass Without Trace, I believe, says it mentions the sound too. It's like it muffles your footfalls.
Right.
So I think that'd be neat to sort of like, especially for people that have, like, I think about this a lot, people that are maybe jaded or like played just a ton of 5e and they're always looking for something new challenge. It's like, well, challenge yourself that way. Where it's like, yeah, we're trying to avoid combat and like by taking advantage of all these other features and spells that nobody really uses that much, but that would be really cool and interesting in that sort of scenario.
Like you can even go so far, like, if you're going to kind of make a game that's based off of sound and kind of taking, Park's example of, something that, hears really well and can be brought in, like maybe give them vulnerability to thunder damage. That could be a scenario of like, yeah, they can hear really well, but you use thunder against them and holy shit, they're going to be, maybe they have to make maybe they're not vulnerable, but like they got to make a con save, or
they're like dazed or stunned or something like that.
Yes.
So, so that's a real risk reward thing too, because it's like, well, it's effective against them, but it's like, but it also might get more of them to come here, and so yeah, that could be really cool.
But I mean, you could then be like, oh well, if you're looking to cause a distraction, and like you could do that kind of thing, and then beat feet so that your allies can go do something else. And, you either trying to catch up to them or what have you. And, perhaps the loud sound coming from here, is going to be more of a draw than your feet moving away from it. So like you can use,
sorry.
You can use that engine, for you or be used against you, depending upon how smart you're going to play.
Does 5e have the ventriloquism spell still? Because I know like 3 earlier editions, including 3.5,
I don't remember
that. It always just seemed like, who the heck, especially like in first edition, it's like, man, if that's the spell you wound up with to start, that sucks. But it's like, that's probably why it was used back then, because it was just, and I think Minor Illusion basically does that now, because you can
right
audible sound. That's what it was probably used for, just to like, like, oh, we've been creeping here, hiding here for half an hour waiting for this patrol. It's like, okay, they're down there. Make a sound down there, or like throw your voice or whatever to distract people.
But I mean, I don't remember seeing a ventriloquism spell in 5e, but there are a lot of spells now, so it's incredible that I just missed it.
But yeah, like I said, like Minor Illusion, I remember that one came up because it was like, or you can make a sound, But yeah, I just thought it was interesting. And I always like when I can think of a situation where like features and spells and things that don't get used a lot would be cool and relevant. Like, oh, that would be really neat in this situation. Like, yeah, maybe, you instead of casting Fireball, you cast, Silence 15-foot radius or whatever. I don't think it's called that. So I think, Dungeon Master has a question. When you prepare a session, do you ever have a theme song or album you listen to for inspiration? I'll let you go first.
Not generally, but it's sometimes there can be something that jumps out at me and says, "Oh, well, this really is going to work for this particular one."
I actually am the total opposite. Like almost all the time, I do have something that I get a lot of inspiration from music. In fact, one of the OG Ingest Quest sessions was like just lifted totally from a video I saw that just it was like like one of those videos that had like a story going on while the music's playing. And I was like, this would be really cool to make into an adventure. And that was one of the more fun ones they played. It was towards the end.
Cool.
So yes, Dungeon Master, I totally do that all the time.
Well, I mean, that's the great part about every DM. There's always going to be differences as to how things are prepped and planned, and what you do is inspiration.
That's the trick to DMing, I think. At least at this point in my life, that I've come to realize, it's like, it's not being really good at voices or being blah blah blah. It's like finding the things that help you run a better game and just learning how to do those things better, like honing your, you know what I mean? Just like figuring out what things you need to prep and what sort of things help you create a better experience at the table, and just doing that.
What makes you a better DM for the players that are gonna be at your table. If you come to a table, with you being the best that you're gonna be, and you don't do voices, and all of your players are expecting voices, like, they're gonna be.
Yeah, they won't care because they'll just have a fun time.
Sure, but there's the chance, that it might be great, but it might not be everything that they were looking for.
Yeah.
Like that to me is where, like, I hope what your group is, and that they know what kind of GM that you are. Because I don't do a whole lot of voices. Like, I've done some, and there's been times where, like, players have really liked, what I did. I spent like a week practicing for one role for a thing back in the first campaign, and I don't think anybody really gave a crap. So it was like, well, if I spent a week practicing this voice, do I really need to care about it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm totally inconsistent as a DM and player. It's just like, sometimes I thought, as a DM, I relay things as a third person. Oh, this NPC tells you this. Sometimes I talk in first person. As a player, I do. It doesn't matter to me. It's not right. Like I wouldn't like critique somebody on that, but
oh yeah, I don't mean to be throwing any kind of shade. I'm
just, no, I didn't think you were.
It's a scenario. Like, I think it's important to know, trust the players.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of trusting the players, and this does relate to sound, and just recently in our game list, our guest game over the Troll Bridge, Brian Cowan did a great job doing this, and I think we all sort of strive to do this sort of thing too, which is give players agency, and like just as simple as saying like, oh, you hear this far off cry of of a strange beast. What does it sound like? Right? Like throwing questions to players, and that is super effective. I mean, it works on me. I love when DMs do that. It's like, wow, I really do, feel like it's like, I'm helping create something. And as a DM, I'm the Teflon DM. It's just like, yep, you take the ball here, take it. Like, you want agency? You got it, baby.
Yeah. So like, I'm talking to Dave today about, different things that, Nerdarchy does. And player agency is absolutely one of those things that, like, it's a rather new concept to me. Like,
Oh, for sure. Me too.
Didn't know about it until after we started Nerdarchy.
Yeah.
But I fully adopted it. And I know that there's some GMs that's how they do a lot of their things. So if you're not using player agency, you really should be, because it will help you out immensely.
Yeah, it takes a lot of weight off your shoulders, and that's sort of like the DM trick. It's like, yeah, you can get the players to do a lot of heavy lifting. I think some people are wary because they feel like, it's like a sort of like a cheat, because it's like, well, they didn't prepare this stuff. They're just riffing over it. It's like, well, that's what's fun. I mean, that as a DM, I like I like having things to react for that I wasn't expecting, because that I learned long ago. It's like, look, they're going to do unexpected stuff whether I give them agency or not. You know what I mean? So it's like, at least it's sort of more controlled in that way. And sometimes that can give you cool ideas as a DM, like, oh, wow, that does, like if somebody says it sounds like, oh, it sounds like a dying giraffe, to reference the chat. Like, okay, maybe that'll give you some idea or something, right?
So like, when it comes to agency, like, you do, or you should be a little careful with it. One of the times that I offered agency to players, like, their first thing, oh, it's full of treasure. It's like, well, that's not what I was looking for.
Yeah, right.
And I overcorrected, when somebody was like, oh, well, there's a monster. So I put in a monster, but they fought the monster. So they could have then gotten the treasure too. So I felt like I didn't give them the treasure and I could have given them something. But like I was so like it was one of my first times ever doing it. So like they weren't prepared. I wasn't prepared as to how to deal with the response. Now I'm definitely better at it. But like you can use what Robin did in the aforementioned Those Bastards game, where you can prompt your players of like, hey, I'm giving you homework. Here is some agency of what I want from you. And like, even if you're not doing a streamed game, if you give players some forewarning as to, have a general idea of what you're going to be asking, they can kind of come up with that stuff and be prepared, as opposed to like, oh crap, you're doing this. I wasn't ready for it. Come to me last. Come to me last.
Yeah.
Like they got to be put on the spot. So,
but little things like that, like asking what things sound like, or the name of something. I think in little bits and pieces. I liked it. I loved it. Actually, that was some of my first encounter from watching you guys way back in the day. So thanks.
Oh, of course. Yeah, it's just the little things when you ask for agency. It really does let you hear, getting that sound linked in the
nice.
You can hear what they're thinking. It lets you know as a DM what they're interested in is. If you say, oh, you walk around the corner and you see Dave, tell me. If Dave's interested in combat, he's going to put a monster. If he's interested in something to talk to, he's going to put some, random traveler or a merchant or, something else that's there. So it gives you some kind of indication what somebody is looking to do next. And you've engaged that player with, oh, you can tell me. They tell you, now lay it on thick. Give them what they're asking for, and you can fulfill that niche. I've done sequences where, like, over the course of a session, I've given everybody a chance to offer agency, and there have been times where, like, the needs have been so met by everybody else's agency that the last player was like, "Nah, I'm good." There's nothing there.
I wonder if, like, maybe for people that that kind of bounce off those sorts of concepts, it's like they feel like, because I was thinking like, well, that's probably why we sort of generally just like to think of things in an encounter way, right? Because it's just like, well, I'll do this and then just go off the cuff, and then I have this encounter for just whenever I need it. And it's I wonder if people that bounce off those things feel like, well, that's not fair, because it's like I'm ending up there no matter what I do. And I guess that's somewhat true, but I guess, it's just, maybe there's just like one of those things where it's like, there's two kind of people. There's people that know that and don't care, and people that do. It's like, well, I don't care, because it's like, that's just, where we ended up, and that makes it's like, I guess as a DM and a player, I like that part. I like that style of play where it's just like, yeah, a lot of it's just free form, and the DM lets you do a lot of different things and reacts, and then they have these things that they had, and they just sort of like weave in when it seems appropriate. I like that.
And that's where I'm at when it comes to GMing or playing. I'm there for entertainment. I'm there to have a good time with people that I care about, that I'm giving a portion of my time, my day.
I think it's because we like to just like interact with the world, and more like the older I get, the more I play, it's like that's more fun to me to think like, well, what would it really be like in this world? So the idea of just going from like challenging scenario to challenging scenario, like in a module, just doesn't, it's just like, that's not as appealing. It's like, I like all the connective tissue to make me feel like, well, what I'm doing, I want to do that thing, because it's like, it means something.
Sure. Now there are players and people out there who feel like the world needs to be a living, breathing thing. And if I come to a fork in the road and I choose to go left, but you put something on the right, that, you are insulting me by moving that to the left.
Yeah.
That's what you prepared. But you as the player never know what's to the right until you choose to go there. And there is nothing to the right until the DM puts it.
Yes.
So I don't care. As long as everybody is having a good time, I don't care what pieces of your world you have to move around, as long as everybody's having a damn good time.
I guess that's the cheat. That's the loophole we found. It's just like, there's nothing to the right or the left. There wasn't even a right or left until they got to that point. It's like, I thought it was just a straight road, but sure, there's a fork in the road. Okay.
I mean, there have literally been times where I've rolled the dungeon randomly as they're going, and it's like, all right, here it is. I mean, heck, I've run entire sessions just entirely random, had nothing prepared, and they said had a great time, and I'm like, that's great. No, because the players who come to my table know that's the style that I do things, and they're happy with it. Mm-hmm. It does not faze me, matter to me, what somebody wants to do. And if that's the way you want to do things, and if that's how it's fun for you, by all means, I'm not going to say it's wrong.
100%.
But
that's what's cool about RPGs, man. There's a zillion ways to play them.
For right or wrong.
Yeah.
Because what's right for you is going to be absolutely wrong for somebody else.
So we're getting close to the end, and Parks did have a sound-related question. Said a Battle of the Bands game with a group of bards. I would say not just bards, but we'll get into that. I'm sure a lot of sound-based stuff will be used there, song spells and sound effects. Sure, I would say a lot of different characters and NPCs, and everything. Again, that's one of those things where like real world stuff intersects with like fantasy world, which is my sweet spot, where it's just like, yeah, all the stuff in real life, plus there's spells and monsters and magic items on top of it. So, fighters could be, your security for your band, and they work the pit, but it's like, that could be, it's like, who knows what you might hear when you're just walking around the crowd as security. You might hear a little adventure hook. So again, I just wrote about this in my editorial that is based on these chats this past week of just like, I love themed campaigns like that, because you can do all the stuff you do in D&D campaigns, fight monsters, get treasure, explore places, and then you also have that other set dressing, which is whatever the theme of the campaign, Battle of the Bands, that you all work for, like an adventuring company office, which is what I wrote about, or your criminals or whatever. So that sounds super fun to me. And there's all the spectacular magical effects that you could, programmed illusions and all that stuff. Sure. It's like, as you go up in level, that's your goal. It was like, it costs a lot of money to put on those shows and put on spectacular shows. And, when you're like 15th level, it's like, yeah, you better be describing some kick-ass programmed illusions to me as the DM.
So, you'd be looking for magic items that can do illusions that you don't have to use your concentration on. You'd be looking for, magic items that, give you additional concentration slots, or find some ways to be like, how can I get more out of this spell?
Change how you look to make like effects and stuff. Yeah, totally.
But I mean, and like, you could literally do kind of what I did with some of the Dungeons and Delving, where it's like, it's a skill challenge, a skill check, scenario for how good are your illusions, how good is the actual performance, like what is it that you're taking part to do here, and whether it's just a individual that's doing it, or whether it's like the combined group doing all of this stuff. I think all of that, matters and can be a lot of fun.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, you're traveling, so there's all those again, yeah, all the things that you can do in a typical campaign, plus, the set dressing that makes it fun.
So as we get down to our last couple minutes, if you got any quick questions about sound effects in D&D, that kind of thing, go ahead and throw them in the chat. I will remind you that we are not going to be playing Zoo Mafia tomorrow night. We have a scheduling issue, so we'll be doing the season finale of that next Tuesday. Dave will be back on Friday with the usual live chat. And of course, our regular, Wednesday and Friday videos will kind of flow as normal. With that, uh, again, I'm going to keep pimping out that newsletter giveaway. Not only for signing up do you get access to some cool stuff on our website, but the monthly giveaway and the a chance to game with us each month. Dave, Doug, and I each take a turn running a game for you guys. But it's typically $50 or $100 or more worth of cool nerdy swag. And next month's a big one. I'm gonna say it's probably $300 to $500 worth of stuff.
Wow.
Look to social media. I imagine if it's not already shared, Dave's going to be sharing it soon. There's minis, there's a book, there's a set of warlock tiles that are in there.
Nice.
There's some awesome stuff from the aforementioned creature curation. We have a couple of their randomly designed dungeon decks. Like I said, a whole bunch of stuff that's put in there. There's some stuff that's been sitting on the shelf for a while, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to pile it all in one box and give it away all at once.
Badass.
No more questions came up. It's 9 o'clock. So you guys know what that means. You'll have to, wait until the next time to sound off your questions. Sign up for that newsletter, like, share, subscribe. All of those things that we always ask you to do. And you know what? Until next time, stay nerdy.